Hey, what's up, guys? It's In Squared Sports coming back with another video. Today, we're talking about the NFC and more specifically the NFC South. Is that correct? We're on the NFC
Yes.
South now. We're doing kind of post-draft reactions, how we think the division's going to shake up. We'll probably do on all of these. We'll probably do a more specific like lows and highs for the team in terms of record once it gets closer to the season. But for now, we're just going to do like post-draft where each team stands. So doing the NFC South. So I'm going to start with the Carolina Panthers. So the Panthers are my second favorite team in the NFL. I'm not from Carolina, but I just really like them. Christian McCaffrey is my favorite player in the NFL right now. I really love the direction they're going also. I don't necessarily love Teddy Bridgewater super uh, well, but I like Cam. But Teddy Bridgewater is a good, solid quarterback that's not going to have too many mistakes. I think he'll just be able to be a facilitator, and he has a little bit of athleticism to fit the Carolina Panthers scheme, in my opinion. So even if he's just there a year, I think he'll be able to just keep things afloat and possibly have a chance to go to the playoffs. Like I said, Christian McCaffrey is a beast. Their wide receivers are underrated. I think there are three wide receivers: DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, and Robbie Anderson that they brought in. All three of them are really solid receivers, and I think that's one of the more underrated receiving corps in the league. They did lose Greg Olson, but they have a younger tight end, Ian Thomas, that's decent. He's getting better. They did also lose Luke Kuechly, which really hurts. That's probably the biggest loss for them is Luke Kuechly because they don't really have a super good replacement in place. But they drafted all defense. I don't know. We should look up a stat later, but like this might be the first time a team has drafted all defense in the draft because they drafted no offensive players in this draft. They drafted straight defense the whole way. So, but I think their draft was very underrated when you look at Derek Brown, the best defensive tackle in the draft. Itur Gross Matos at the end of, I think, the second round or in the second round. They drafted him. He's a defensive end. They still have Brian Burns, who was a rookie last year. So that defense is getting a lot better.
Yeah.
And I think once they start to improve their secondary a little bit, I think they will really be a contender. But I think they could even contend this year for a playoff spot, even though they are kind of rebuilding, according to some people. I don't think they're rebuilding. But Nick, go ahead and give me your opinion on them.
Yeah, I actually like the Panthers a lot, and I really love their draft. That's how I think you should do drafts. And I think their coach is sort of new to the NFL. I mean, he's a college coach, and
Yeah.
he's famous for rebuilding teams, and he's really rebuilt this team, I believe. I don't know how I feel about Teddy Bridgewater. I was skeptical. I pretty much anytime he played last season, I was like, they're not winning. They have Teddy Bridgewater, but I'm pretty sure he went undefeated with the Saints last year or lost one game. I don't know how I feel about him. That's my biggest if. And like, if he plays at a level that's decent, like plays at like a Gardner Minshew level where he's, maybe turns the ball over here and there, but really isn't turning the ball over, like just a quality game manager, I guess is the way to say it. I think they can win games. I think they can go 9-7 and potentially compete for the playoffs. Maybe go for that 6 or 7 seed. Um, they have a tough division, though. I'm
Yeah.
so high on every single one of these teams here in this division. Um, I love their defense now, like with everyone he said. But the biggest issue I have is that they lost Kuechly. And Kuechly is a Hall of Famer, one of the best middle linebackers of the decade. And he was a leader for this team. And they just lost pretty much their best leader for this team. And that's going to hurt the defense. And I don't know. Also, their offensive line is lackluster. And I think that's going to bring them down. I think they're going to sort of have that same season that like the Texans did or the Seahawks did previously. It's the quarterback, but like they have weapons and they have a defense all around them, but their offensive line, I believe, is going to stall them. I think their defensive backs and secondary is underrated. I do believe the Panthers can win games, and I think they're going to win some games that are surprising to people. They're going to have lots of trap games, and I think they're going to win them. I like this. I love the direction of this team, and if you're a Panthers fan, you should be excited because Matt Rule is doing it right. So I'm going to move on to the Falcons, and I love the Falcons this year. I liked them last year, but that's sort of disappointed. But towards the end of the seasons, the Falcons, like, they switched. The defensive coordinators, job, whatever they were doing, it changed, and their defense sort of got into shape. They're getting some players back, and their offense is good. Matt Ryan's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. We forget about him all the time. He gets the job done. They really, in my opinion, they had a pretty decent draft, drafting a defensive end and a cornerback in A.J. Terrell. They want to help that defense because I believe their offense is good. They got Todd Gurley, and even though he has arthritis issues, I think he's still a good quarterback or a good running back. I mean, he gets the job done, I think, and they have depth that they can bring in, and they've invested like 5 first-round picks on offensive linemen. They have a good offensive line. I believe this team can compete with anyone, and they could also lose to anyone. They do have injury issues, and this is a team that you look at and you're like, if healthy, this team can go far into the playoffs. But that's a big if. Nick, what are your thoughts about the Falcons?
I'm not as high, of course, on them as you are, but I do like what they have, but I feel like their Super Bowl window and their playoff window is kind of closed since they went to the playoffs. I just don't think they can get back, especially with this division. The division part is the biggest issue. Like, if they were, like, in the NFC East or something, then maybe they could compete, but I don't think with all 4 teams being potential playoff teams, I just think they'll still be just underneath everybody. And I do like Matt Ryan. He's getting up there a little bit in age, but age doesn't particularly all the time matter as a quarterback. I don't know how old he is exactly, like 35, maybe 34.
I'm looking right
something
now.
like that. But he's still really good. He's still a top 10 quarterback in the league. I like their offense, like with Julio Jones and forgetting who's their other receiver.
Calvin Ridley.
Calvin Ridley. With Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley. I do like that, and their offensive line's good, like you said. They have good defensive pieces if they stay healthy, like you said. Again, I agree with that point. They drafted a cornerback. They drafted a defensive tackle.
They also traded some picks for the Ravens tight end Hayden Hurst. So
they got another tight end because they lost Austin Hooper. So Hayden Hurst is a solid tight end. But I still like their roster's good, and I think it would take Todd Gurley being an MVP like he was a couple of years ago for them to do something. Because I really don't trust Todd Gurley anymore after last year, just with his injuries, and I think he's kind of gone down a tier in the running back tier. They've lost over the last couple of years. They lost Devontae Freeman. Possibly, I don't think he's even with the team right now, but it doesn't look like they're going to bring him back. Tevin Coleman they lost also. So they don't really have a ton of depth at running back, if I'm correct. They just have Todd Gurley, and if Todd Gurley doesn't pan out, then I feel like they're going to be missing that running back piece. But they have a solid roster, but I just don't think it's enough to get over the hump. So,
fair. Okay, do you want to move on? We're going to talk about the two teams that have been making, headlines for a while now with the Saints and the Bucs.
Yeah. So I guess I'll do the Saints first, and then we can talk about probably the most interesting team, the Bucs. So I'll talk about the Saints. So Drew Brees, of course, came back on, I think, a 2-year contract, if I'm right. And he is really old now. He's getting really up there in age. He probably won't even be able to go 1 or 2 more years. He's still, a top 10 quarterback, though, even though he's so old. I like their offense. Michael Thomas is really good. Well, more than really good. He's one of the best receivers in the NFL. And then Alvin Kamara still, he didn't have a great year last year, but he still is one of the top 5 running backs, I think, in the league right now. Their defense is very underrated as well. They're just a really solid team overall. And I think with Drew Brees' leadership, that's going to be enough to put them in a position to make the playoffs. So, yeah, what do you think?
Yeah. So the Saints, I was low on them last year. We made a whole 40-minute video of why I was low on
Yeah.
them, where Nick was just having to listen to me there. And I'm gonna say it again. I'm not as big of a fan of them, but I can't count them out, I guess. They drafted all right. They don't really. They got Jameis Winston as a backup, which I really like. But they have a good wide receiver options. The thing is, Michael Thomas is going to recede not because he's getting worse, it's because last year he had a historic season, one of the greatest receiving seasons for a wide receiver ever. That's bound to get worse. He's not going to get any better, really. That'd be crazy to say that. They got Emmanuel Sanders, which I really like. I don't think he's that special anymore, but maybe he's got one more season left in the tank. The defense is all right. Yeah, they're a solid team and they're coached really well, but they're in a tough division. I do think they're a 10-6 team, but with a tough schedule. They got about a year or two left. As long as Breeze is there, I believe they're going to be contenders. But this window's really closing. I don't really have much else to say about the Saints. They pretty much are the same team as they were last year, and I sort of think it's going to resemble the same team as last year. I think Alvin Kamara is actually going to be a little bit better, but yeah. So the Bucs, the Bucs are hands down the most interesting team when you sign the greatest of all time in Tom Brady. You end your season, let me get this straight. You end your season with a quarterback who had 5,000 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 30 interceptions. And then you get rid of him and you sign the greatest quarterback of all time. On top of that, you sign Gronk. Now, I love this team's draft. They got themselves a left tackle to protect Brady. They improved on O-line. They have the best options for weapons. They got running backs. They invested in that. And you don't need a first-round pick to get a good running back in the NFL. Their defense is pretty underrated. At the end of last season, they had one of the best run defenses in the NFL. Pass defense is their biggest weakness, and that's obvious. But Arians is a proven coach. He's a good coach. And I think a stat that I saw that made me go, oh, okay, the Bucs are for real and not just hype, is that when Winston had one turnover or less, they won five. I believe they were 5-1 in those games, or 4-1 in those games. To me, that shows that if you don't turn over the ball, this team can beat anyone. And Brady doesn't turn the ball over. He just doesn't. He's very conservative, but he still has a good deep ball. He just never got to use it last year because he had no weapons. Now Brady has, in my opinion, at this point, Godwin is a better receiver than Edelman is, talent-wise, and Evans is one of the best receivers that Tom Brady's ever worked with. He has O.J. Howard as well, he's a pretty good tight end. He's a better blocking tight end than anything else. And those other two options, they're not going to be used to their full ability. One of them just came back. The other one usually on and off the field. But they're both great receiving options. One with Gronk, he has a connection with already. I don't believe Gronk can be on the field 80% of the time. I'd say 40% of the time. But that's all they need him for. It's hard for me to see a flaw in this team besides the fact that Brady's actually going to a new home. And Brady's a proven winner. It's hard for me to see flaws in this team besides pass defense, and I think they can compete with anyone as long as you have Brady there. If you think Brady can't still play, he was playing well 2 years ago with weapons, and now he has no weapons. Last year he had no weapons, and he still played pretty well, and he never got the opportunity to take deep balls. And we saw in week 1 when he had Antonio Brown, he was playing fantastic. But
yeah,
we're going to see a Brady in the new system, and that's the biggest thing. And their draft was good. I can't really complain about it, I guess. So Nick, let me hear your opinion on the Bucks.
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of convincing me right now because I had my opinion on them, but the more you talk about it and the more I think about it, it's hard for me to say what I'm about to say. I said when before the draft happened, so this was before the draft. I said 8-8 for this team. So now after the draft, after they got a left tackle, they got a running back, and they got a couple other pieces. It's hard for me to still say 8-8 just because of everything you've said. Just their offense is just really good now. I mean, adding Tom Brady and adding Gronk, who is not going to be amazing, I don't think, but he's still if you're in the red zone, he's one of your top targets for sure. And that might be all they use him for is when they get into the red zone, just put him in and have him go get balls that Tom Brady throws. So it's hard for me to say what I think, and we'll make another video on records, what we think records are going to be. But I just think that the division is still tough. You have to remember that. But I think my opinion right now is they'll probably be better than I thought they would be. I think they'll probably go 9-7 or 10-6 just because of the weapons they have in place.
Yeah, I agree. This division is going to be fun to watch, and it's going to be the best. I think right now it is the best division in the NFL, right there with the AFC West and the NFC West, which we'll talk about in another video. But if you let us know your opinions down in the comments below, make sure to follow us on Instagram. And yeah, we'll see y'all in the next video. Thank you.